Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Yeah, we're letting you guys in little by little. Okay, good.
Hello.
Hi, guys. Okay, we're good. Hold on, I'm putting it through. Olga, you're, I'm not sure why, but your picture's not showing up. Like your, oh, there it is. It's back. It's back. Can you put the date on the cover?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's so cute. Wait. Yeah, there we go. Okay, hold on. I'm going to screenshot it. Okay, very good. I think we're okay to start. Everyone, we want to welcome you to the webinar, and it's really an honor to have Olga here. She's going to go over SHSAT reading strategies. We've run this webinar before, and I'm very happy to tell you that it ran quite successfully. So what we're going to do right now is begin with Olga introducing herself, her backgrounds, and we're also going to just go over some strategies. Just a reminder of what we went over last time, and maybe this will be the 2.0 version where we work to implement those strategies as well. We're really, really happy that you guys are here participating and listening. And remember, these are not just strategies for the SHSAT. You can use this for the SAT and the ISE exam and the SSAT and the LSAT and the MCAT. There are a ton of other exams this is going to help you with. So we have the chat box. I'm going to write hello, chat, hello. Actually, it would be really nice to know what middle schools you guys go to. That'll be cute. Do you want to share with us what schools you're in? So maybe we'll have like a little school reunion, okay? So you can tell us what schools you're in. Tell us what middle schools you're in, okay? So we'll see who's listening. And also the way the meeting is going to run from 6 till 7 o'clock, we're having the webinar. At 7, we take a moment just to pause. We want to thank all the healthcare workers. We really want to say thank you to every single person who's in the front line. So at 7, we'll take a moment just to clap into the chat to thank everyone. And then we'll continue from 7 till 7:01 to 7:50. At 7:50, Olga's going to do a wrap up. Actually, you should probably do it around 7:45. Is that good? At 7:45,
sure. I think I'll start even earlier because I feel like these were a hit, these little prep sheets that I made. So I'm going to start with introducing myself, reviewing these prep sheets, and then at the end, we can make 2 more of these prep sheets for types of reading questions and also poems, poem strategy, because I didn't do that last time. So we'll probably stop around like 7:30 for me to put together those 2 prep sheets and then close everything out.
And then you can type any questions. You can type questions into the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Olga, as you're in medical school right now, like I think the kids would love to hear about your experience in Staten Island Tech. So we should leave just a couple of minutes.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so that they can ask you. So you can type questions into the chat. Okay.
Sure.
I don't know why some kids are saying that the chat does not open to everyone. My chat is open to everyone. Oh, is that is the chat box not
okay,
open?
How about now?
Wait, let's try the chat. Wait, can you guys try? We're figuring, hold on. Oh no, did I mess up the chat settings? I'm the one who set this up, so this is, wait, this is my fault.
Oh, I got it. I'm gonna fix it right now.
Everyone publicly.
I just
says
fixed
chat
it.
publicly.
I got
okay,
it.
Can everyone chat now?
Yep, now
Wait,
it's good.
guys, let's do me a favor. So do it again and just tell us what schools you go to because it didn't go. We'd like to hear. So just if you could just type in text so everyone can know what schools you're in. We have Nest Representation, Lab, BSGE, Anderson, Baruch, Mark Twain, Wagner, Greenvale. Oh, Russell Sage. I went to Russell Sage. Halsey, Principal Srirachi, say hello. MS-74, Wagner, Louis Pasteur, basis. Lots of basis kids. Very cool. St. Ignatius Loyola School, Eastside Middle, MS-74. Wow, we have a really diverse representation. We have a lot of different schools, which is great. So I'm happy to hear that. And I guess, Olga, if you could quickly let us know where you went to middle school.
Absolutely. I went to Christa McAuliffe in Brooklyn for middle school. And then for high school, as Francis mentioned, I did go to Staten Island Technical High School. And then I'm graduating from Macaulay Honors at Brooklyn College, and I'm starting at SUNY Downstate Medical School in August. So that's a little bit about myself and my background. It's so nice to see so many familiar names and faces. I just want to give a brief overview of how today will work. So I'm just going to start with doing a brief recap of the little sheets that we made last time in case somebody missed them. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and try to apply some of those strategies to these materials that we have, because we only finished half of the exam last week, and I'm going to keep annotating. And like always, you guys will get a copy of my annotated notes, and we'll go through the questions. I'll tell you kind of my thought process as I'm answering these questions. And as Francis said, around 7 o'clock, we'll take a break. We'll clap for the healthcare workers. Maybe I'll take a few questions, and then we'll kind of do a little bit more work. And around 7:30, I'll make 2 more prep sheets. One will be on common reading questions, and another one will be on reading poem strategies. And then we'll go ahead and close it up, and you guys can ask me any questions about study techniques or my background or anything like that. Somebody asked, are we going over last time's exam? It is the same packet as last time, but remember guys, the last thing we read was this poem together. So we still have approximately half the reading test left. I think we have 3 or 4 reading passages and 1 more poem. So we're doing the same packet, but the stuff that we didn't do yet, the stuff that I didn't annotate. So everybody can get prepared and get those notes out, okay? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get ready and start reviewing these sheets that I made last time, and anybody that has any questions can go ahead and import them. We were up to questions starting from 27. The passage is called Spirit of the Herd, just for everybody to get the page. And somebody let me know they have to leave halfway. That's sad, we'll miss you. But try to get as much out of it as you can from the first half, okay? So go ahead and keep asking any questions in the chat, and I'm just gonna go ahead and start reviewing this. So these are very general reading comprehension strategies that, as Francis mentioned, you guys will be able to apply to absolutely any standardized exam that you take, even the Common Core exams that you guys take in regular public schools, but definitely more harder exams, such as even the MCAT. Believe it or not, in the MCAT, there was a full-length reading comprehension section. So the first strategy I have here is not to depend on the answer choices. And this is huge. And this is something that I actually struggled with myself. Some students will know the answer, and then once they see the answer choices, they'll get confused. So what you absolutely have to do is formulate an answer in your head, and match that answer with one of the answer choices. And some strategies that can really help you with that is really matching the language or the word choice. So look for synonyms, look for images or symbols that match. So if there's a question asked and then the word curiosity, that's the example I gave last time, that's the idea of matching. And I'll talk about that a lot in practice today as we're reading the answer choices and the questions. And I'll show you how I'm going to match the language in the passage to the actual language that we see in the answer choices. That was a review of strategy 1. The next thing we talked a lot about is annotation strategies and techniques. So a lot of students on this exam struggle with time management, and the key to get through it on time is annotating and having your own code annotations that you can quickly understand. So the way that we did it last time was I showed you guys that we could only read the first paragraph fully, and then after that we were only reading 1 sentence at the beginning of the paragraph and 1 sentence at the end, and forming just a phrase to summarize what that paragraph was about. I also talked about coding, so you can underline names, you can circle dates, and that way when a question asks you about a date, you can go just through your circle annotations and quickly find the evidence for that question and where to refer back to in the passage. Or if they ask you about a specific person, again, you can just simply go through your underline annotations and so forth. And you can create all these different codes for yourself and different abbreviations, and these are all very personalized strategies. And we talk about this a lot also during our SHSAT extension. I want to emphasize annotation techniques as much as possible because this is the type of study technique that's going to stick with you in college, in graduate school, and like anything that you do. And it's helpful not just in reading comprehension, but also like just in studying in general. So if you're studying like for a bio test or annotating a textbook, all of these are very common and important study techniques. All right, so the next choice was something that you have to avoid doing. So we're avoiding extreme answer choices. So words like absolutely, always, definitely, never, without a doubt. You'll notice that most of the passages, the author's perspective or opinion is never really too strong one way or another. They're always somewhere in the middle and they're leaning slightly one way or another. And that's why we avoid these extreme answer choices. We also talked about avoiding generalizations and also avoid any information that's not in the passage. So those are kind of like false answers. So something that was not stated in the passage, you can't assume that to be true unless it's an inference question. So avoid those answer choices also. And then the last one is just being broad and making connections in your head. So you can pay attention to the title, you can pay attention to the context blurb, which I'll talk about a lot in a second when we start reading. Pay attention to any repetitions and patterns. And this is especially important in the poems, which again, I'll elaborate on today because I'm gonna make a whole sheet like this on just poetry. And absolutely, somebody just asked in the chat that they can't find a PDF to the Spirit of the Herd. So it's in the same exam as last time. So Francis went ahead and posted the Google Drive link. So you can click on the link and scroll down. It's the passage. The first question for that passage is number 27, just to orient everybody. All right, any questions on any of this, the review from last week? Anybody want me to elaborate on anything here?
Wait,
you guys
sorry,
will see.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
What does strategy 4 say?
It says making connections.
Okay, thank you.
And you'll definitely get a copy of these notes. And if you weren't here, that's absolutely okay. I'm going to show you how to apply all of these strategies in practice once we start reading the passages. All right.
And
so
do you guys, can I just tell the group, everyone, why don't you use this opportunity just to take a screenshot so you have it saved on your phone? You can review these, okay? So everyone can take a moment. You're welcome to take a screenshot of it.
Absolutely. And just to reinforce, you are all going to get a copy of this, and I'm going to include these notes and the new ones from today. Okay, so these strategies are about revision and grammar, which our last webinar was more focused. Today is more on like reading comprehension. So you won't see me apply these. So I'll just go over these very, very, very briefly. So the first one says, make sure that everything matches. So this is a giant trope in grammar. Things have to match. Things have to match in terms of plurality. So that's what I put as number 2. Things have to match in terms of tense. So past, present, and future. And finally, things have to match in terms of perspective. And what I mean by perspective is like first person, second person, third person perspective. So these are the 3 main categories. And everything has to match. So matching is a giant trope or theme in grammar. So here in this little circle blurb, I reviewed singular nouns and singular verbs and plural nouns and plural verbs, and how to, like a little trick. And the trick is that it's backwards. So when nouns are singular, they don't have an S, but when verbs are singular, they do have an S. So you can notice this relationship. The next strategy that we did last time was find relationships between 2 sentences and then use the appropriate transition words. So if you're noticing that the relationship has to do with contrast, we're using a but or however or a while or nevertheless. If you're noticing an example, then we're doing for example or for instance, and so on. Finally, follow the punctuation and group things in your head. It's Form B, guys, to the people that are asking in the chat. So follow the punctuation. So we learned that semicolon is always independent clauses. A semicolon is always on the independent clause. A period in a new sentence always combines two independent clauses. Commas, we learned, are a little bit more complicated, where sometimes they're for dependent and independent clauses, and sometimes they're for independent clauses with a fanboy. So we can add that to our notes here, but we covered it last time. And again, I can elaborate on all of this, and I absolutely will in my extension classes. And you guys can ask me more questions about this towards the end. This is just meant to be as a review. And finally, the last strategy, and this is about time saving, is not to read the whole grammar passage. So we talked about annotation techniques for reading comprehension. This is an absolutely time-saving technique for grammar. You absolutely don't have to read the whole grammar passage because it's not testing your ability to comprehend reading there. It's testing your ability to think about syntax and flow of a story, so transition words. And on top of that, it's also testing your grammar ability. So comprehension is not as important. So we can save time and not read the whole thing. Clauses are another word for sentences, and if they're independent, then it's a full sentence, and if it's dependent, it's not a full sentence. Okay, so any questions on any of the stuff before I move on to the material? And also, did everybody find this test, this form, it's Form B, and this passage, so we can go ahead and start and everybody's on the same page? Okay, so everyone's quiet, so I'm going to take that as everybody is good. There's no questions, and we're going to go ahead and start reading this. So what I thought would be a good idea is last time I showed you guys an annotation strategy with not reading the whole passage. So today I want to do both. I want to do one passage where we read it completely, and this is the technique that you'll use if you're good on time and you don't need to rush. So you can go ahead and spend the time in read a passage completely. This is also the technique that you'll use with like fictional or story passages, because those are a lot harder to read just the first and last sentence to gain a gauge. Those you kind of need to read the whole thing to understand character development. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and read this whole passage, and then the second passage that we do, I'm going to annotate it the way that we did last time, so you guys can see both, and you can see what you can use if you do have the time, and you can see strategies that you use when you're on a time crunch. And I will absolutely send the grammar notes also. You guys will get this full packet that I have open in front of me annotated at the end of the session. Okay, so like we learned last time, the first thing that you do when you start reading a comprehension passage is you absolutely need to read this blurb. So this blurb provides useful context. It tells us when something was written. It tells us who the characters are, and it kind of prepares you to start reading the story. So I call this the context blurb, and I absolutely recommend that you guys read it before any passage. Yes, you will get this full packet annotated, all these notes via email at the end of this session. So I'm gonna go ahead and start reading this out loud. So it says in this excerpt, so right away we know we're dealing with an excerpt, and that's evident by our title also. We're always reading the title. It's published in 1914, so that can tell you a little bit about like the historical context.
Hold on, sorry. I just want to make sure, does everyone have a copy of this, the excerpt of the herd? Please type it into the chat. If not, then we'll send you the link. Okay, go ahead, Ola, please.
Okay, so just to reiterate, the people that can't find it can scroll up. Francis did send the link. You open that Google Drive link, and it's Form B, and it starts on page 17. And I'm gonna go ahead. But if a lot of people don't have it, go ahead and type it into the chat as I move through this passage, so we can get you guys situated. Okay, so we figure out who it's written by. We have Dallas Lore Sharp. So whoever remembers, not from last webinar, but from webinar before, I talked about ethos, logos, and pathos. So when they're giving you who wrote it, that's clear ethos. We know that he's an author and he's a professor, so that's giving us background on who wrote it and what we can expect, whether an argument from him would be argumentative and persuasive or not. So what he's doing is he's describing a summer cattle roundup in August in Oregon. So right away that seems like it's a summary of the passage. So you guys need to think in your head right away when they give you such generalizations like this, that's summary. That's what the whole passage is about. So when questions come about like what is the passage, you can remember these broad general ideas. So somebody asked me what ethos is. So I'm gonna go ahead and review ethos, pathos, and logos because a lot of people asked me last time also. So what ethos, pathos, and logos are rhetorical devices used for argument. And you guys will get these notes also.
So everyone, please check the chat box. And by the way, the whole ethos, pathos, that is going to appear again for the SAT exam.
Absolutely, this is super important, and this is gonna help you guys be better writers also. And I remember learning this even in my AP Language and Composition exam, and now I have cousins that are taking these AP exams online, and these topics are super, super important. So ethos, pathos, and logos are forms of argument. So when you make an emotional appeal, that is classified as pathos. So by an emotional appeal, a good example is you guys can think about commercials. And when they want you to donate money, for example, they appeal to your emotions. So they'll show you kind of very sad pictures of animals that are hungry or need food for adoption or need money or something like that. So all of that is an emotional appeal because they're playing to your heart. They're playing to your emotions. So that's the example that we're gonna remember. So I'm gonna say advertisements. Ethos is the idea that I brought up here. Ethos is an appeal to the person, to the author, and it's an appeal based on credibility. And basically, like if they explicitly say like the author of this article is a renowned professor, is a doctor, is a lawyer, whatever, that is giving him credibility because he has the basis to be making this argument. He's qualified to be making this argument. And you guys can think about that as me. I'm qualified to teach you because I have all these qualifications and experiences, and I've been through it myself. So that kind of argument is an appeal to credibility, and we classify that as ethos. So here I'm just gonna write author is a professor as an example. And then finally, logos, this is an appeal to logic. So whenever you guys see like facts or statistics, that's the author trying to convince you using logos. So here we have it. We reviewed pathos, ethos, and logos. Anybody have any questions on this? All right, so I hope more people have gotten the link now so I can go back and actually start reading this passage and we can get started with the questions. So if I keep reading the blurb, we have the heat and dust had been relentless for 3 days. The cowboys were exhausted. The cattle were restless. The ranch boss, Wade, had led the drive to a watering place only to find it empty. So I want you guys to notice a theme right away. Adjectives give us themes. All of these adjectives are negatively connotated: relentless, exhausted, restless. All of these are showing kind of the theme and the atmosphere of the story. So that's right away kind of bringing, making your mind think about the context of you starting to read this. And finally, the last thing I want to bring your attention to is that we're introduced to a character. So we know that our character is Wade. The example for logos was statistics. And again, to reiterate, if you miss anything, you will get a copy of all of these notes, so don't be too concerned about it. All right, so we're ready to start reading. We have a lot of background, even though we just read the blurb. We understand thematically what's going on. We understand the big general idea. We know who wrote it. We know he's credible, so we know there's an appeal to ethos, and we know one character. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and read it. And again, this is the passage that I'm going to read fully. And the next one, we're going to annotate, and I'm not going to read the full thing, just to show you guys both techniques. Okay, so here we are. It says, along with the wagon had come the fresh horses, one of them being Peroxide Jim. A supple, powerful, clean-limbed buckskin, a horse, I think, that had as fine and intelligent an animal face as any creature I ever saw. Wade had been saving this horse for emergency work. And why should he not have been saved fresh for just such a need as this? Are there not superior horses as well as superior men, a Peroxide Jim to complement Wade? So I want you guys to think about rhetorical questions right away. This is a technique also. Rhetorical questions are used for emphasis or for reflection. So whenever you guys see this, I want you to consider that also as a reading strategy. All right, so that was our first paragraph. Again, we're introduced to a new character. Not only do we have Wade, which is the guy with the horses, we also have a horse, and that's Peroxide Jim. And I'm gonna keep reading. It says, the horse knew the cattle business and knew his rider perfectly, and though there was nothing like sentiment about the boss of the P Ranch riders, his faith in Peroxide Jim was complete. The desert where the herd was cramped was one of the highest of a series of tablelands. Notice that whenever there's a one, that's called like a superscript, and you can go to the footer and they define that word for you in case you guys didn't know. So a series of tablelands or benches. It lay as level as a floor, rimmed by sheer rock from which there was a drop to the bench of sage below. The herd, when overtaken by the dusk, had been headed for a pass, descending to the next lower bench, but was now halted within a mile of the rim rock on the east, where there was a perpendicular fall of about 300 feet. In the taut silence of the stirless desert night, with the tension of the herd at the snapping point, any quick, unwanted sight or sound would stampede them. The sneezing of a horse, the flare of a match would be quick enough to send the whole 4,000 headlong, blind, frenzied, trampling till spent and scattered all over the plain. And so as he rode, Wade began to sing. The rider ahead of him took up the air and passed it on until above the stepping stir of the hoofs rose the faint voices of the men, and all the herd was bound about by the slow plaintive measures of some old song. It was not to soothe their savage breasts that the rider sang to the cattle, but rather to preempt the dreaded silence, to relieve the tension, and so to prevent the shock of any sudden startling noise. So everybody should be reading along with me as I'm reading. We're about halfway through this passage. So they sang and rode, and the night wore on to 1 o'clock when Wade, coming up to the rim rock side, felt a cool breeze fan his face and caught a breath of fresh, moist wind with the taste of water in it. He checked his horse instantly, listening as the wind swept past him over the cattle, but they must already have smelled it, for they had ceased their milling, the whole herd standing motionless, the indistinct forms close to him in the dark, showing their bald faces lifted to drink the sweet wet breath that came over the rim. Then they started on again, but faster, with a rumbling now from their hoarse throats that tightened Wade's grip on the reins. The sound seemed to come out of the earth, a low rumbling mumble, as dark as the night and as wide as the plain, a thick, inarticulate bellow that stood every rider stiff in the stirrups. Then the breeze caught the dust and carried it back from the gray-coated ghostly shapes, and Wade saw that the animals were still moving in a circle. He must keep them going. He touched his horse to ride on with them when across the black sky flashed a vivid streak of lightning. There was a snort from the steers, a quick clap of horns and hoofs from far within the herd, a tremor of the plain, a roar, a surging mass, and Wade was riding the flank of a wild stampede. Before him, behind him, beside him, pressing hard upon his horse, galloped the frenzied steers, and beyond them a multitude borne on and bearing him on by the heave of the galloping herd. Wade was riding for his life. He knew it. His horse knew it. He was riding to turn the herd too, back from the rim, as the horse also knew. The cattle were after water, water mad, ready to go over the precipice to get it, carrying horse and rider with them. Wade was the only rider between the horse and the herd, between the herd and the rim. It was black as death. He could see nothing in the sage, could scarcely discern the pounding and panting shadows at his side. He knew that he was being borne toward the rim. How fast he could not tell, but he knew by the switch of the brush against the tapardoros, again the superscript, and the plunging of the horse, that the ground was growing stonier, that they were nearing the rocks. To outrun the herd was his only chance for life. If he could come up with the leaders, he might not only escape, but even stand a chance at heading them off upon the plain and saving the herd. There were cattle still ahead of him. How many, what part of them all, he could not make out in the dark. But the horse knew. The reins hung on his straight neck where his rider had dropped them, as yelling and firing over the wild herd, he had given this horse the race to win, to lose. They were riding the rim, close on their left bore down the flank of the herd, and on their right under their feet was a precipice so close that they felt its blackness, its 300 feet of fall. Then Wade found himself racing neck and neck with a big white steer, which the horse, with marvelous instinct, seemed to pick out from a bunch and to cling to, forcing him gradually ahead, till cutting him free from the bunch entirely, he bore off into the swishing shades. The steers coming on close behind, following their leader, and in after them swung others. The tide was turning from the rim. More and more were veering, and within a short time, the whole herd, bearing off from the cliffs, was pounding over the open plains. Whose race was it? It was Peroxide Jim's, according to Wade, for not by word or by touch or hand or knee had the horse been directed in the run. From the flash of the lightning, the horse had taken the bit, had covered an indescribably perilous path at top speed, had outrun the herd and turned it from the edge of the rim rock without a false step or a tremor of fear. Okay, so we just read the passage. I wanna ask everybody in the chat to just please keep it related to the webinar, because it's distracting to me and the other many students in this webinar. There's about 100 people here. So please keep it professional and stop arguing in the chat. Any vocabulary questions or questions about the passage in general that we read, everybody at this point should understand the basic sequence of events, the characters, what happened in our story. So any questions that I can answer before I start with the questions.
And then Olga, I want to add one more thing. We're going to send a quick email just so that you have the test that we're using at the very top of the email that we're sending to you. Okay. And that's it. And we really just want to remind you guys that we miss you, and we really miss you guys joking around. It just now's not the time. So unfortunately, we're going to put you in the waiting room if you spam the chat box. So please don't take it personally, but you're going to be in the waiting room if you keep this up. Just remember, we do miss you and we do miss your humor. We just can't have it right now. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Make me proud, guys.
Absolutely. All right, so let's take a look. The blue highlights are just my annotations, things that are sticking out to me. So I'll talk about them when we go to the questions. But basically, what I'm highlighting is important events. So for example, the vivid streak of lightning, that was the turning point in the story. After the streak of lightning was when the stampede started. So that was a major turning point. So oftentimes they'll ask you, what was the major turning point? At what point did the story change? So as I'm reading, because I'm experienced with these types of exams, and I know that that's a common thing that they ask, once I notice a major turning point in a story, I highlight that. Once I notice important details, so for example, frenzied steers, if we look at the adjectives, frenzying and galloping herd, we can tell that the whole herd is very kind of like angry and anxious, and everybody's like moving very fast. So I underline that part because that tells me the theme. A precipice is like a cliff, so they're about to like fall off. That was the scary part, that the herd was going really, really fast and he was unable to stop them, and they were scared that they would fall off the precipice. But what happened, if you guys understood the story, is that this horse, Peroxide Jim, he kind of saved the day from Wade's perspective, okay? So I'm gonna go on and read. So somebody's asking me, you said not to read the whole passage, but you did. So I addressed that, right? So last time I said one strategy, if you have a time constraint, is that you don't have to read the whole passage. So I want to show you guys strategies of reading the whole passage and how to address that for the students that don't have a time issue, that are good with time. And then for the students that do have a time constraint, I'm going to read the next passage like I showed you guys last time. All right, so I hope that addresses everybody's questions. We're going to go ahead and start with 27. So 27 says, which sentence from the excerpt best explains why Wade reserved Peroxide Jim for emergency work? So we want a sentence that explains why this horse, like why did he save him? And if you guys understood the passage, at the end of it, obviously this horse is very skilled. He has this ability to survive in a life and death situation. He saved the day from the stampede falling off the precipice, as somebody asked. So we're looking for some line that shows us that this horse really took control and saved the day. And that's an explanation of why he would reserve him for such an emergency situation, right? Emergency work. So remember I talked about in the strategies matching the language and the answer choices to the passage. So we're also matching it to that of the question. So the question's asking us about emergency work, and in emergency work, we want to think about like a situation that has to do with like life and death. Because that's exactly what this was. This was a very dangerous situation. So if we're reading through the answer choices, it said, along the wagon had come the fresh horses. One of them is this guy. He's supple, he's powerful, fine and intelligent. So this is a maybe because it's complimenting the horse. The horse is great, but I didn't see anything in this answer choices about emergency work. So I do see that Peroxide Jim is a good horse. He's fresh, he's smart, but I don't see anything referring to emergency work. So that's a maybe. There might be a better answer choice. So I'm not eliminating it, but it's a maybe. Before him, beside him, blah, 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 blah. If you guys remember, him is referring to Wade, and this is just describing the situation where he was surrounded by the stampede. It's not giving us any insight into how the horse is responding to the situation. So this is not about Peroxide Jim, so I can eliminate that right away because it's not even answering the question. He knew that he was being borne towards the rim, how fast he could not tell. Again, this is describing Wade, so it's not about Jim. So now I'm really choosing between A and D. D says, from the flash of the lightning, the horse had taken the bit, had covered an indescribably perilous means dangerous, path, and without a false step or tremor or fear. So this choice now shows us that this addresses directly the emergency work, where in this crazy situation, this dangerous situation, this horse kind of taken the bit. It means he led the way, he saved the day, and he didn't even have a false step or a tremor or fear. So this is our choice because it talks about both the horse and the emergency work. Does that make sense? All right, so now it's asking about paragraphs 1 and 2, contributing to the development of the central idea. So let's remind ourselves that the central idea is this idea of Wade having, like, there's this horse, and this horse is great, and Wade picks out this horse specifically for an emergency, and it turns out great because the horse saves the day. So that's the basic idea. And if we notice the first 2 paragraphs, it's just this. This is an introduction to the horse, and it's introduction to how the horse is great. It's the horse is superior, the horse is smart, the horse is intelligent. So overall, it's just introducing us, and it's revealing the relationship between Wade and the horse, and kind of building up to telling the story of how the horse saves the day because he's this great horse. And all of that leads to choice A. It reveals the respect Wade had for his horse, meaning like they're mutually beneficial and respectful relationship, how he saved the horse for a specific time like this. And this idea of superior horses and saving this horse, all of that matches the language of respect.
So I want to take 1 minute to let you know, we just emailed everyone in the group right now. We've emailed you a copy of this exam at the very top. So if you want a blank version of it, it's in your email. That's all.
All right, so now this is asking us about paragraph 3, conveying the effect of setting. So setting is place. We got to know where are we. So when you guys see the word setting, you should think where are we, and you should think descriptions. So we're looking for descriptive words. We're looking for adjectives. And if we go back to paragraph 3 quickly, it says taut silence, so it's very quiet. It's stirless, nothing is moving. Any sight or sound would start the stampede. So we're imagining a very quiet, like calm atmosphere, but with a little bit of anxiety, because anytime something would happen, the stampede would start, which is what happens later on with the lightning. So now we're looking for a choice that emphasizes that. And for 29, that is right here, choice B, how the changing elevation contributes to the dangerousness of the environment. So we're talking about the changing. Does that make sense? Right here. The desert where the stampede was met, it was level, and then everywhere it was rimmed by sheer rock where there was a drop to the bench. Does that make sense? This is talking about the precipice. So somebody asked me why I just went straight to E. So I usually just start from top to bottom. So I started with E, and E was correct. So I went ahead and moved on because that's true. But if you have the time, so last time I talked about this, right? So whenever you think A is the right answer choice and you're kind of sure of it, you're confident, that's the choice you had in your head, you go ahead and you pick A, and what you code for yourself is like time. And when you have time at the end, you go back and you check and you read all the other answer choices and you confirm to yourself. But here I read choice A and I wasn't sure, so I went ahead and I went through all the choices. Does that make sense? So that's my thought process as I move through the exam. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to question 30. So 30 says, which sentence from the excerpt best reveals the mood on the drive before the lightning strike? So remember I told you guys the lightning strike is a turning point. So I knew that they were gonna bring it up. So it's a really important skill to watch out for these types of things as you're reading, because you're preparing your brain, you're thinking as if you're a test writer. And if I was a test writer, I would absolutely ask about the turning point of the story. So if you can identify that that part is important as you're reading, you soak up more of that part as you're reading, and you kind of know exactly where to go back to, because I highlighted the lightning strike. So now I know that I can go back to exactly here, and I can compare to how it was before to how it was after. So we have, then the breeze caught the dust, carried it back. He touched his horse when the black sky, vivid streak of lightning. And before that, it was very quiet, if you guys remember, in this paragraph. And in this paragraph, there was all of a sudden a sound. So that's kind of the background that we need to answer this question. And if I read choice E, it says, the herd, when overtaken by the dusk, had been headed for a pass descending to the next lower bench, but was now halted within a mile. There was a perpendicular fall of about 300 feet. So I don't see anything. It describes the setting, right? But I don't see anything in this question that's giving us the mood. So mood adjectives, I don't see anything there. So I'm eliminating this because I don't see anything to answer this part of the question. F says, it was not to soothe their savage breast that the writer sang, but to preempt the dreaded silence, to relieve the tension, to prevent the shock. So all of these words, tension, shock, silence, all of those contribute to mood. Does that make sense? So I'm pretty confident this is the choice, based on the context of the words tension, shock, and dreaded silence. And the mood was very anxious because the writers knew that any sound would kind of preempt the the animals to stampede. So they were trying to keep the sound up in order to prevent there from being like a drastic random sound, prevent the silence, right? That's what they meant by preempted silence. So here we are, 30 should be F. Any questions on that? All right, so 31 is asking us about paragraph 9. So right away, we want to go back to paragraph 9 right here. And again, it happens to be the turning point. So that's when everything was okay. That's like the building of the climax. And then the lightning streak was the climax of the story. So I'm looking for an answer choice that has something to do with that. And exactly right, 31, it presents the incident. So this is the turning point, the lightning that was brought up, the main conflict. The main conflict was that they were in danger. And then 32, we have, he was riding to turn the herd to, back from the rim as the horse also knew. It was peroxide Jim's, according to Wade, for not by word or by touch or knee that the horse had been directed in the run. So how do they develop the central idea? So again, as a review, we understood the central idea after reading it, right? The central idea is about how this horse saved the day. So we're looking for an answer choice that has something to do with that. And we're looking for some answer choice that shows kind of the advantages and the successes and the intelligence of this horse that was able to save the day. So they suggest Wade was unable to save the herd. It's not about Wade, it's about the horse. They imply Wade. Again, it's not about Wade. And then G, they show that Peroxide Jim was able to understand and take action. Absolutely, because this is what the main idea is, that this horse saved the day.
Olga, once you're done, let me know. Let's do like a nice group recap.
Sure. So there's just 2 more questions. So 33 says, read the sentence from paragraph 13. So we have, close on their left bore down the flank of the herd. And on their right, under their very feet, was a precipice so close that they felt its blackness. So bore down the flank of the herd. What is that really meaning? What they're trying to say is that close on their left was the flank of the herd, meaning like the end of the herd, and on their right was the cliff. So Wade was running right in between the stampede, which was dangerous because if the stampede turns, then he'll get trampled on. And on this side, there was a precipice. So what it means was that Wade was in a very dangerous spot because he was in between the precipice, the fall, the cliff, and the stampede, which is exactly what choice C is doing. And you see this idea, this language ride between, and then you see on the left and on the right. So again, this is what I mean when I say match the language. Between makes sense because in the passage, they're telling us directionality left and right, so then he's in the middle. Does that make sense? And then finally, the very last question is asking us, how did the details in paragraphs 14 and 16 convey a central idea? So paragraphs 14 and 16 is towards the end, where we're past the climax. It's getting better. The story is kind of closing in, and we're getting into an understanding that everything is going to be okay. Like the horse is saving the day, and we're summarizing. So that's what we're looking for. And again, it's towards the central idea, which we've already kind of beat against the bush, which is that this horse, Peroxide Jim, is saving the day. He's intelligent, he's smart, he has a feel for everything, and he's saving the day. So again, they highlight Peroxide Jim's natural ability to control the herd and save the day. Somebody said they missed 32. 32 is here. 32 wouldn't be H, because it's not just about that he's unafraid. It's not just about that he's brave. It's about that he took action and that he actually saved the day. Any horse could be brave or unafraid, but it's different than actually understanding the situation, having that level of intelligence to them, and going on and taking action. And that's the important part, that he saved the day. Does that make sense? Not that he was just brave. Is that clear? There's like a slight difference there in meaning. And on top of that, it's also like, it's hard to say that he was completely unafraid of the danger, because perhaps him being afraid also showed that, like, also led him to take action. So unafraid is also a little bit of like that answer choice where there's nothing in the passage that tells you that the horse was unafraid. So it's a little bit of a intense leap. Does that make sense? All right, so we can recap now all together the strategies that I used to get through this passage.
Yeah,
okay?
let's start from the first set of questions. Everyone take a deep breath and let's quickly understand, if we can just go, let's do a recap. So if maybe let's go to the passage again. If you could just do like a 2-sentence summary.
Okay, so 2-sentence summary. We have two characters. We have Wade and we have the horse Peroxide Jim. They have a very good relationship together, and they're bringing the stampede of animals to water. And the animals are triggered by any loud noise. The events, there's lightning, that's the turning point that I highlighted here. Upon lightning, the stampede starts. The animals are moving very, very, very quickly. There's a dangerous situation, and Peroxide Jim, the horse, is intelligent enough to understand, to get a feel for the dangerous situation and save the day. So that was the brief summary. So now if we just recap what we used, anytime the question asked about the central idea, we went ahead and we used the central idea to lead to an answer choice. So that helped us with this question, and that helped us with this question.
Can you zoom it out? Can you zoom it out a little bit? Let's make it a little bigger, if it's possible.
You mean zoom in?
Yes, yes, perfect. A little bit.
So that helped us with this question, right? Central idea, right away, the respect, the relationship between Wade and his horse. That was one major important detail. Here again, central idea. So that again helped us, because central idea was that the horse was intelligent enough to take action to save the day. And then the last question that that central idea helped us with is this value here. Again, natural ability to control the herd. And you'll notice similarities between questions. So for example, 34 and 32 both have to do with central idea, and the answer choice is very similar. So once you guys notice a similarity in the answer choices, that's again another strategy to let you guys know that you're kind of on the right page. Does that make sense? That you're moving towards. Your answer choices should never conflict or contrast with one another. That's kind of a light bulb should go on in your head if that happens. One of those questions is wrong. All right, so the next thing that we talked a lot about is whenever you have an excerpt in a fictional story, understand the turning point. So the turning point absolutely helped us with question 30. Remember, the turning point was the lightning strike, and with question 31, because paragraph 9 was when we learned about the lightning strike and the turning point. Does that make sense? And remember, I figured that out before I even got to the question. So you guys should have this kind of natural ability from reading these passages to highlight when a major change happens. You absolutely have to annotate that for yourself. Then what helped us with the last few questions was understanding, matching the language in the answer choice to that of the passage. So we did that for this question 27 here. Remember, emergency work matched with perilous path, because emergency work signifies an emergency, and that matches with perilous, which means dangerous. And then that also helped us with this question here, where we're talking about left side, right side, and then the correct answer choice has to do with being between. So that language and that directionality helped us use our context clues to get 33. All right, any questions on strategies or any of these?
And then if it's okay, can we just, let's go to the first set of questions. Is it 27 or is there something before that?
27
No, we're
is
good.
first. Yeah.
I just want to chime in a little bit, just to go a little bit deeper with the actual wording of the question. So everyone pay attention. Okay, ready? Question 27. Which sentence from the excerpt, you see where it says best explains? Olga, cross out the word best, blacken it out, bye. So replace it with 100% explains, okay? You see where it says which sentence from the excerpt best explains? Everyone, pay attention. Is everyone paying attention? Say yes. You have A, B, C, and D. So make sure that you choose the answer that 100% is right. Because remember, one is right and the other three are wrong. So you want to make sure that which one 100% explains, okay? Now look at 28. Paragraphs 1 to 2 contribute to the development of the central idea of the excerpt. You see where the word by is? Right, 100% by. So you see right before the word by, put 100. You want to make sure that your answer is solid, okay? What's really nice about answer choice E is that reveals the respect Wade had for his horse. It's just such a simple answer, and that wording is excellent. It's wishy-washy, soft wording. How does paragraph 3 convey? Guess what I'm going to ask you to put in front of the word convey? Who can guess? Who can guess? You can type it in the chat. Very good, Nazifa, Joshua, A+. If I were next to you, I'd give you a cookie. That good, Nick, 100%. So how does paragraph 3 100% convey? Do you see that? You don't want to put like a little bit. You want to make sure your answers are solid answers. How? Because the question is asking you for a solid response. It cannot partially be A or partially be D. It has to be 100% A, B, C, or D. Very good, everyone. Let's go to the next page, okay? If you can maybe try to zoom out a drop. Which sentence from the excerpt, you see the word best reveals? Olga, I'd like you to stab the word, like just attack it. Bye, we don't need it, okay? So which excerpt 100% reveals, okay? The mood before the lightning. So you see that? Make sure that you pick the solid answer. 31. How does paragraph 9, guess what after paragraph 9, guess what I want to put? Who wants to guess? What should you put before? Oh, go ahead. She even got it. Okay, 100% into the overall structure. Okay, and the answer choice D, it presents the incident that caused the main conflict. So we're back to the main idea. 32. Read the sentence from the excerpt. How do these sentences, do they 20% develop? Do they 30% develop? Do they 45%? Oh, London, you're doing such a good job. Good, Nick. Very nice. Who can write me the best 100%? Very nice. So the question is asking you, how did these sentences a little bit develop or 100% develop? You got it? Okay, next one. I like the $sign next to it because every point is money, guys. Every point. All right, next one. Read the excerpt. The phrase, guess what I want to put in front of the word conveys? Guess what I'm going to write in front of the word conveys? Very good. Nathan, I love it. Wonderful. Nick, Ella, Nikhil, Rennie, Alice. Hello, Skylar. I love it. Ready? How do the details in paragraph 14 to 16, oh my goodness, you went ahead, you even knew it, convey? Do you see that? Make sure your answer is a solid answer. And then maybe towards the bottom, you see the white space, Olga? Let's just go over some really important tips again. Avoid extreme answer choices. No extremes. Repeat after me, guys. No extremes. Don't say always, don't say never. You know, they say never say never. That phrase is actually very true when you're looking at a reading passage. Never say never. Don't say always. You know what good answer choices are? They have words like can, may, like wishy-washy wording. Very good, Devin. I love the all caps. You're going to ace this test, okay? That's what we want to see. Make sure that you're putting answer choices that could be true, because if it may, it can, right? We love it, okay? Let's keep going, all right? I'm very, very happy to see this. The only thing you're missing, Olga, is some Kweller blue, okay? Very good. Wishy-washy is good. Do not use the word never. Do not use the word always. It's to avoid extreme answer choices. Everyone, you got that? Are we going to use extremes? Yes or no? No, never. We're never using extremes. Okay, Olga, go ahead. Actually, you know what? Before we go to the very next passage, because we have 4 minutes, who wants to ask Olga about Staten Island Tech? Can you type into the chat? Do you want to ask her any questions about her school? Let's ask her. Olga, what was cool about your school? Guys, let's ask her questions about the school before, because at 7, we're going to do the applaud. Go ahead.
Okay, so what was really cool about tech was we were exposed to like science and research at like a really young age. So like I had my first experience working in a lab in high school, which was really, really, really crazy. And it prepared me for college like nothing else did. I commuted only for the first year because my family originally lived in Brooklyn. So I took the bus every day. It honestly wasn't that bad of a commute. It was about like 45 minutes for me. After that, my family moved to Staten Island just by chance. They absolutely provide opportunities for internships, both paid and not. There's a lot of connections. That's why I felt like the school really, really, really prepared me. And even connections like through like to laboratories and through the College of Staten Island and other CUNYs. We have a relationship with Brooklyn College. So there's like a lot of kids that do like graduate level research. There was a debate team. I was not on it, but I know absolutely we did have one. How is the lunch? I honestly brought my own food, and high school was like 5 years ago, so the lunch isn't necessarily memorable. I did not want to go to another school in Brooklyn. Tech was my first choice because my family was moving to Staten Island, but I did score high enough to get into all of them, including STY. We do have a music program. We have this huge, it's called Sing, where basically like 2 classes, so like the freshmen and the juniors would pair up and they had to prepare like a whole show. So we'd have like auditions. I was in stage crew. And then it's like a giant competition, and we would have judges, and it would be really cool because we'd have a celebrity judge always like come and announce the winner. So one of the celebrity judges I remember was Colin Jost. If any of you guys know who that is from SNL, his dad teaches at our school, so that was like a really cool connection. And there's different celebrities every year. There's a bunch of sports. I was on the swim team. We have a track team. We combine sports with a different school. So the different school has access to like a swimming pool and like everything like that, and it's nearby. There was a lot of homework, of course, assigned. Homework load depends on what classes you took. So AP classes had more work associated with them. We have a lot of different electives. I took a cool public speaking class. We have language. They teach Russian, so that's a cool elective. How many members in each Sing group? I don't know, it was huge. There's about 300 kids per class. I would say that at least like a third of us participate per year in Sing. So maybe like 100 or 50, 60 kids from each grade would participate. I didn't really have any doubts. I loved tech when I went there. It's a very small environment. So like I said, there's 300 students in the graduating class. Everybody knew each other. My family was moving to Staten Island anyways. It was kind of like the perfect fit. There was a basketball team for girls. my order for school, I don't remember exactly, but I think I put Stena, I know for sure I put tech first, and then I think I put STI second, even though logically it doesn't make sense because the cutoff is usually higher. There was cold lunch and hot lunch. Thank you everybody for clapping. It is 7 o'clock. Handling homework is all about time management, 100 million billion% time management. And that's an important skill that comes, like, it's so important in college. It's important in anything that I ever studied for or I did. I do have to say I did procrastinate a little bit. I think every student does. It's a matter of just keeping yourself balanced. I still procrastinate. I'm literally graduating next week.
Olga, everyone, I'm going to do something really cute. I'm going to unmute everyone, and we're all going to say bravo to the healthcare workers, to everyone whose mom, dad, family members in healthcare. So we're going to take a moment to say bravo, and we want you to like scream yay and bravo into the phone, okay? You can only scream those 2 words. All right, go ahead, guys. We're going to set up the unmutes. Okay, hold on. Let me figure out how to do this. Bear with me.
1 second.
Ready, go. Bravo. Applaud. I want to clapping. There are supposed to be 126 of you. I hear 2 hands.
Once I've done that.
Bravo.
Bravo.
Bravo. Devin, Santanio,
Cheers.
Amelia, Grace, Gran, Hassan. I want to hear you people.
Work.
Okay, everyone, you've done so well. We're so proud. Okay, and we'll take some screenshots of the bravos so we have it as a happy memory at Kweller Prep. Okay. With that being said, let me see. Olga, I have to unmute you. Ready? Okay, you're back, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
right,
so
guys. So that
yes,
was like
go
a
ahead.
great Q&A. We're going to keep that up at the end. I'm going to save some time for it. Your questions are really great and they are really important, but I'm going to go on and continue. I think we'll have the time to go through one more passage, and then I'll make ourselves those little sheets. We'll do one on poems, and we'll do another one on types of questions, and then we'll recap everything, and we'll sum up, and you guys can go ahead and ask me any questions in the chat at the end, okay? So I want everybody to settle down. Thank you so much for your enthusiasm and your claps. But we're going to go ahead and get through one more passage. And for this passage, I'm going to not read the whole passage. I'm going to annotate it like I did last time. And if we remember last time I said, the only thing that you do read when you are using the strategy is you read the whole first paragraph. So we're going to go ahead and read the whole first paragraph together. And then after that, we're going to focus on the subtitles, the subheadings, and then only on 2 sentences from each paragraph. And we're going to see if that's enough to get us through this passage, all right? So this one has no blurb, and it's called a memory revolution. So right ahead in my head, revolution signifies some sort of change. So transition, so that's what I'm thinking about right away. And then I know that the topic of this paragraph will be about memory. So it says, a high school senior logs onto a computer at the library to double check the application due date listed on the college admissions website. Nearby, a librarian helps a group of biology students use a database to search for recent studies about mammals. In the past few decades, the internet has become an integral component of daily life for many people. So what I'm underlining right now is that the internet has become an integral component for daily life for many people. And the reason that sticks out to me is because the first 2 sentences are examples of that. So usually the way things are structured is we have big idea, example, example, or big idea, supporting detail, supporting detail. So that's a common way passages are structured. So if I'm noticing a patterns of examples, I'm searching for the big like detail, the big general theme around that, right? So the first line with the senior, that's an example. The librarian, another example. So here, the internet, that's theme. So I'm circling that right away. Then it says the seemingly limitless power of search engines made the internet search extremely common. And today people increasingly rely On the internet's vast accumulation of sources to access all types of information, scientists are beginning to examine how this reliance is modifying the strategies people use to store and prioritize information in their mind. So this last sentence is really kind of the thesis of what this passage is about, that scientists are examining this reliance on the internet and what that does for our ability, for our memory's ability, our ability to store and prioritize and understand information. So this last sentence is super important, so I'm going to go ahead and star it because that's our thesis, okay? And that's our first paragraph. So we got through the first paragraph, and now we're going ahead and moving on to the subtitles. So subtitles are very important. Subtitles are like mini titles. They're going to tell you what the section you're about to read is. So the section that you're about to read says a dependable and valuable asset. So we're starting to read, we're going to only read the first sentence and the last sentence. So it says, psychologist Benjamin Storm from the University of California. So remember, we said we're going to underline people's names. And then we have researchers Sean Stone and Aaron Benjamin devised an experiment to study students' tendencies to depend on the internet for facts. And then the last one says their results show that 83% of the internet group continue to consult Google the second round, while only 63% of the memory group chose to do so. So it seems like this paragraph is about an experiment about students' tendency to depend on the internet. So I would say experiment, students depend internet. And that's enough. And then we're going to go ahead and move on to the next paragraph. It says people's growing inclination to rely on the internet in order to retrieve information, particularly facts and figures, is called cognitive offloading. So here I just learned a new term, cognitive offloading, and it seems like that's what this paragraph is going to be about. And then we have, consequently, people's minds are free for other cognitive feats, such as connecting data, learning new information, or solving problems. All right, we're up to the next excerpt, which is called Filing Information Away. And again, I'm only reading the first sentence. So we have the use of the internet also appears to be modifying the strategies people use to store information in their mind. And now I see people, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to underline all these people. We have Betsy Sparrow, Jenny Liu, Daniel Wagner, and some new studies. So here it seems like this is going to be about new experiments. So it says, to begin, researchers examined how people evaluate which information deserves their effort to remember. So what I would label here is I would say experiments about prioritizing what to remember. And we're ready to kind of move on and read the last part here. It says, according to Sparrow, the internet has become an important form of transactive memory, an external source of the recollections, blah, blah, blah. So we just learned a new term, which is transactive memory. So I'm underlining important terms that are essential to this passage. And I'm also underlining names, and I'm reading the first and last sentences to annotate what each section is really about. Does that make sense to everybody? And obviously I'm stopping to explain, but on test day, this would really happen in a matter of minutes. So this is definitely a very good time-saving strategy for whoever has an issue with time constraints specifically. So moving on to the last paragraph, it says, as the internet's resources continue to expand our external memory, some question whether the process may cause people to depend too heavily on technologies. And then the last sentence, far from making us stupid, these technologies are only things that will keep us smart. So it seems like we have some semblance of like a counter argument or a counterclaim here where maybe this dependence is bad, but then overall we qualify and we summarize saying that no, it's actually beneficial. So I would label this like counter / qualifying the argument. And qualifying the argument refers to when you mentioned, like, some people would say this is bad, and then you qualify, but it's not. You address that other side.
And as everyone is looking at this, you're welcome to take screenshots, okay? And Olga, I just sent you something into the chat. So you guys are welcome to take screenshots. We want you to review this and make sure that you're very, very comfortable, okay? So I'm gonna go back off the mute, on the mute.
Okay. All right, so this passage is new also because we have a figure, which is unique. You don't always see this with passages. So you do have to spend some time into understanding what this figure is about. So it's going from new information goes to your sensory memory, and then it goes to short-term memory, and then we either forget it or it goes into long-term memory. So just follow the arrows to understand the process of the graphs. Sometimes you guys will see graphs with axes, and in that case, we can do a whole lesson on like how to analyze graphs, but the most important part is to understand the axes. Absolutely, you are going to get these emailed notes at the end of class. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump to question 35 and see if we can answer it. So it says, which sentence from the passage suggests that internet search engines may lead people to rely less on their own ability to recall information? So first of all, just piggybacking off of what Francis was really trying to enforce, we're looking for a strong answer choice that 1,000,000, 1,100% answers the question. So which sentence from the passage 100% suggests that using internet search engines may? Notice though that even though we're looking for an answer choice that's 100%, even the question is using soft language. So that's enforcing this theme of soft language and staying away from extreme answer choices, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and point that out here. May lead people to rely less on their own ability to recall information. So sentence A, choice A says the internet has become an integral component of daily life. So integral component of daily life is not enough to say that people are going to rely less on their own ability. That's just describing the internet. So this one is not our answer. We can eliminate. B, the internet group was required to use the search engine. This is describing, the internet group is describing one specific experiment. And it's describing like the methodology of the experiment, but the question is asking us like, suggest like it's looking for results. So it's not B. Here we go, their results. Before I even read that, I understood that the question was asking for a result. So there's the skill. So right away, C is calling my name. Their results show that 83% continued to consult, 63% chose to do so. So again, the internet group relied on the internet more. Therefore, they relied on themselves less. So these results directly support what the question is asking us, and we have our answer C. Any questions on that one? And you guys notice that I didn't have to go back to this passage, and even without reading the full passage, you're able to understand just based on the question asked and the quotes given to you. It's about answering the question and really understanding this relationship. Does that make sense? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to 36. 36 says the details in paragraph 3 about cognitive offloading. All right, so I highlighted that word. That was a phrase, that was a new keyword. And even if you don't necessarily remember what that keyword is, we can easily go back, because I did highlight that in green, and we can reread this whole paragraph for ourselves in case we need to. So first of all, the definition of cognitive offloading is given in the first sentence that we did read, which is this ability, this growing inclination to rely on the internet for retrieving information instead of relying on yourself. So let's see if I can answer the question with just like that. Suggesting that reliance on the internet for information is inevitable. Here we go, the extreme answer choice, inevitable. Inevitable is similar to always or never. So we can eliminate this choice just because it's very extreme. E, demonstrating how the methods used to store and find information have changed over time. Maybe. G, explaining how encyclopedias, not true, because they compare the use of the encyclopedias, but that's not the central idea of the paragraph. And then H, implying that more information can be, again, that's not necessarily, that doesn't refer to cognitive offloading. So the best answer here is F. And we can go ahead and reread the third paragraph. Since we saved time on reading the passage, you do have the time to go back and read the third paragraph to confirm that to yourself. The third paragraph says, blah, 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 blah. In the past, people use resources like encyclopedia. Consequently, people's today. So notice these keywords in the past and today, transition of time. So that also matches with this idea changed over time. So again, matching the language, past and today, that can help you confirm that this choice is correct. So somebody's asking me about choice D in 35. So I want to go ahead and address that. So this sentence says, in the past, people use resources like encyclopedias to assist with their memories. However, today, the internet, so just saying that people can digitally access doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to rely less on their own ability, versus choice C is a direct result from a study that does conclude that. Does that make sense? That's for 35, and 35 is choice C. For whoever missed it, it's circled here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump to 37 now. So 37 says, how do the details about the experiment described in paragraph 5 convey a central idea of the passage? So first of all, 100% convey, right? So we're putting that in on every question just to continuously remind ourselves. And second of all, central idea. So we talked about this a lot in the last passage. You have to connect, whenever the question asks for a central idea, you have to interweave that somehow into the answer choices. So the central idea of this passage is how there's been a memory revolution and transformation. Remember how just from the title, I predicted that it's going to be about a transition, about something new. So it's about how memory is changing because of the internet. That's the central idea of the passage. So that thought should be circling your brain as you're looking through these answer choices. Now it's also asking us about paragraph 5, which we did not read fully. So again, we can go back, we have the time to go back and understand the details of paragraph 5. So I'm going to go ahead and read that out loud for us. So to begin, the researchers examined how people evaluate which information deserves their effort to remember. For this experiment, participants read 40 trivia facts, such as an ostrich's eye is bigger than its brain, and typed the statements into a computer file. Half the participants had been previously told the file would be saved, while half believed it would be erased. Next, the participants wrote down every fact they could recall. Those who believed the info would be erased and no longer available would recall 40% more facts than those who thought the information would be saved. So basically what this experiment is showing us is that we can prioritize what we should remember and what we should not remember. The people that knew it wasn't going to be saved prioritized memorizing it more, while the people that thought it was going to be saved didn't need to memorize as much because they thought that they were still going to be able to rely on it. So I'm looking to kind of integrate that, right? So if I read choice A, they suggest the act of repeating information on a keyboard may improve the person's memory. Nope, that's not what this experiment was about. Whenever you guys have experiments, you should think about the different groups, right? The different groups always tell you what they're measuring in the experiment. So one group knew that it was going to be saved, not going to be saved. Another group thought it was going to be saved. So that's the primary difference between the groups. That's what they're measuring. It has nothing to do with repeating info on or typing on a keyboard. They explain that a person will forget info faster if it's considered unimportant. Nothing to do with unimportant, just whether or not it's prioritized, whether or not they'll have access to it or not. So that's not what unimportant is. C, they indicate that a person may start to forget details. Again, it has nothing to do with it being overwhelming. So probably choice D, and we're going to confirm that. They suggest that memory is affected by whether a person expects to have access. Exactly. This is exactly the difference between the groups. So whenever you guys have science experimental passages, think about the difference between the two groups in the experiment. You have a control group always. You have an experimental group. Whatever factor they change, that's what they're measuring. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so we have the study described in paragraph 6, influenced researchers' ideas about memory in the digital age by blank. So first of all, 100%, like always. Second of all, we didn't read paragraph 6. So we're gonna go ahead and go back and read paragraph 6 out loud together. So paragraph 6 is about yet another experiment. So we have, in another experiment, the same researchers tested the ability of study participants to remember where to access information. So I'm going to highlight this because this is what the study is about. And then they go ahead and give us the details. So it says, for this trial, participants read and typed trivia statements which they saved in folders with generic names such as facts and items. After spending 10 minutes writing down all the facts they could recall from memory, participants were asked which folder contained a particular fact based on a key word. For example, which folder has the fact about ostriches? Overall, participants recalled information's location. So I'm highlighting this because these are the results. More often than the content itself, correctly identifying 49% of the folders for specific facts, while only remembering 23% of the trivia. The researchers concluded that our memory is adapting to the internet by prioritizing where to locate info and even when the details are forgotten, and we're calling this transactive memory. So this paragraph shows us an experiment which tests whether we remember where information is stored, what folders we put it in, even when we don't remember the information ourselves. It found that that is true, and they called this phenomenon transactive memory, and they concluded that this is a result of the internet age, as a result of our dependence. So I'm looking for a choice that has something to do with that. So highlighting instances when organizing detailed information made it easier to remember. No, it's not about, that's not what the experiment was about. And it's not, they didn't make it easier to remember. They found that people knew where it was when it was organized, but they didn't actually remember it. So that helps us eliminate E. Confirming that keywords can be remembered more easily. That's not what's being tested. Identified a shift in focus from remembering specific information to knowing where to find it. Absolutely. And this matches the onset of the internet. So absolutely choice G. Question 39. So we have which evidence from the passage is most relevant. So again, 100% relevant to the claim in paragraph 7 that far from making us stupid, these technologies are the only things that will keep us smart. So remember that this is the point that I highlighted, that this was qualifying. This was the qualification of the argument where we addressed the counter and we were like, nope, it's still smart. So we're looking for something in the passage that now supports this. So choice A says, the revelation that most people opted to use the internet to answer relatively easy trivia questions than relying on their own brain power. This isn't showing that it's going to keep us smart or show us stupid. It's largely irrelevant. B, the assertion that the storage of information on the internet frees people to focus on higher order tasks such as problem solving. Absolutely, this is an example of what's going to keep us smart, problem solving. So I'm already thinking choice B, and I'm matching, the way that I know that is because I'm matching the language in the passage, keeping us smart, to the question, problem solving. That would keep us smart. That's highlighting critical thinking. The connection between how people organize info in their mind, their ability to recall that info, nothing signifying our intelligence. And again, D, the description of transactive memory. Again, nothing to do with keeping us smart. So B is the very best option here. Okay, any questions for me? So we have one last set of questions. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and continue. So we have, read the sentence from paragraph 7. As the internet's resources continue to expand our external memory, some question whether the process may cause people to depend too heavily on technology. So again, remember we talked about a potential counter, right? So I'm looking for an answer choice that summarizes that. So A, presents a claim about the risks of relying on the internet. So this is true, risk of relying, but this is not true. There's nowhere in the passage that says that it prompted them to do the study. So we can eliminate that based on the false answer choice. F, it contrasts a disadvantage. Nope, it's not contrasting. It's saying this is a potential counter. So what I mean by potential counter is like when we talk about a counter argument, you're pro something, right? So this author shows us that the internet is changing our ability, our mind's ability to store information in a beneficial way, right? His opinion is positive. But then he's saying some people think that this might help make us depend too heavily. So he's like, this is my opinion, but some people argue the opposite. And then, but they're wrong because blah, 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 and it's actually still making us smarter. That's what the whole last paragraph is about. So that's the type of answer choice I'm looking for. And here we have that same word I'm using, counter argument. And a counter argument is in G and H. So that's the difficulty. We're picking between G and H. So the problem is that it's not changing to a cautious tone, and this counter argument is not developed. He mentions it, and then he's like, nope, that's not the case because the internet is actually making us smarter. That's the last sentence. So we eliminate H, and the best answer here is G. Does that make sense to everyone? Is everyone understanding what I mean by potential counter now? All right, great. So here we have the effect of the internet on a person's memory is illustrated in the passage through the presentation of studies that blank. So what's the purpose of mentioning these studies? So first of all, just to bring the lesson full circle, this passage is loaded with logos. So anytime you see statistics and studies, you should think logos. That's the argumentative form. So I'm going to highlight studies here, and I'm going to write logos just to bring your attention to that and bring it for full circle with what we started with. Now, if we look at A, it says, examine how the use of search engines changes the way people evaluate and store information. That seems like the central idea. That's what it's all about, how the internet changed our memory. That's another way of saying that. So I'm good with choice A. And again, I would codify this and I would say time and go back and check. Or if I'm feeling okay on time, I would go ahead and quickly read through the other answer choices. But A seems good. And then last one, it's asking us about the diagram. How does the diagram provide additional support for the topics presented in the passage? So these questions are important because you only want to show what the diagram depicts. So E says it reveals why human beings must adapt. Again, strong language, must adapt. We're avoiding this right away. I don't care what the rest of the choice says. This is not the answer because of that strong language. It indicates how people can use the internet to help improve their long-term recollection. Potentially, but the graph doesn't show us anything about internet. The word internet is not here anyway. The graph is how memory works outside of the internet. So it's not going to be choice F. It shows how study participants' brains distinguish between important and unimportant details. Again, there's nothing on the graph that shows that. And then H, it depicts repetition and rehearsal. Absolutely, on the graph, I can go ahead and highlight retrieval, repetition, rehearsal, and that's the main idea of the graph right here, repetition and rehearsal. So again, matching the language in the passage to that of the answer choices. So someone's asking me what I meant by logos. If you guys remember at the very beginning of our seminar, we defined 3 rhetorical devices used for argument, which are pathos, ethos, and logos. And logos was an appeal to logic or statistics. So this last passage that we read, which was loaded with studies and statistics, the author was 100% convincing us, persuading us of his argument using logos. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, perfect. Okay, so there's 3. There's logos, ethos, and pathos, and the one that I was just referring to is logos. That's the one with the studies and stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and read this poem, and then we can close off with types of questions and poem strategies, and that'll be the end of our webinar today. All right, so this one is called Serpent Mound. Like always, we're gonna read.
Olga, do you mind? I just want to chime in before we go. I want to remind you guys, before you start a passage, take a deep breath. No matter what, you're starting something new, take a deep breath. Just remember to level yourself. And now we're about to start the new passage. So everyone take a minute, take a deep breath. And then I want you to repeat after yourself, I can do this. So repeat after me. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Okay. Yes. Make me proud. Okay. Good job, Nick. That's what I want to see. Okay. I can do this. All right. Please make me proud, guys. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, you are going to get all the email and notes and annotations. And absolutely, Francis is right. Positive affirmations are everything. If you repeat that to yourself every single day before the passage, in the mirror every day, Superwoman pose, Superman pose, it it makes everything, your whole day better. I 100% agree. All right, so I'm gonna try to speed this up a little bit to make sure that we have time to get through this last passage and also have time for a nice recap at the end and a question answer period. So it says, we're reading the context blurb always, like I told you guys in the beginning. So it says, the Great Serpent Mound, located in Adams County, Ohio, is a human-made mound of earth that researchers believed was created between 300 BC and AD 1100 by an indigenous culture. Okay, so it seems like this is what our whole poem is going to be about this human-made mound of created by an indigenous culture. So that's kind of our overarching theme. All right, so Ohio, 1846, here's our context, our setting. And it says, Brush Creek stood low when the museum men came, with their measuring tapes and sketchbooks. It was winter, fringed with ice. The creek doubled back on itself as if it had forgotten something. Pa was in Cincinnati, or else on his way home, so Ma told me to lead the men into the marshy low grounds. It being winter, there was little underbrush to speak of. In the summer, there would have been briars, poison ivy, biting flies. I listened for the swish of a beaver's heavy tail, the chitter of a chickadee, or the cry of a hawk, but the winter silence of the creek pressed down on all of us like a weight. The humps in the ground were all but invisible until you were right up on them. The figure was even less obvious, the sinuous body, the tail coiled 3 times around, and at the other end the mouth wide open. In the summer, the creek bottom was crowded with so much life that you could trip over the ridges of earth before you saw anything at all. In winter, you could climb a tree and get some idea of the whole thing, the serpent's body undulating, slithering silently across the ancient earth. At the mouth end, there was an oval mound as if the snake were about to swallow an egg, as snakes sometimes did in our rickety henhouse. My pa always said, or as if swallowing the sun, one of the museum men suggested, taking notes with his quill pen, an old-style inkhorn slung at his side. I like that, swallowing the sun. Just the sort of thing a snake might want to do. When later I told my sister Ruth, she disagreed. It is singing to the sun, she insisted. That is why its mouth is wide open, she said. Sometimes I think I hear it on summer nights, not swallowing, singing. So that was the end of the poem. I want you guys, we're going to talk about this a lot when I summarize kind of poem strategies in just a second. But what I want you guys to focus on right now is kind of like the structure of the poem. And if you notice, first of all, the passage is called Serpent Mound, right? So we're thinking about a snake. And then if you look at the pattern of the words itself, do you see that kind of curving pattern, like a serpent or like a snake? And then you notice the serpent's body undulating, slithering silently across the light in the night. So slithering means like going quietly like this, side to side, and then undulating means smoothly rising and falling. Somebody just asked me that. Absolutely, I'm going to give strategies to understand poems at the end. So what you're noticing right away is the shape. So this is not accidental that the poem looks like this. It looks like a snake for a reason, and it's called the Serpent Mound for a reason. So all of that is a connection. Does that make sense? And somebody just asked me what sinuous means. It means having many curves and turns. So all of these kind of go together thematically. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead into the questions. So 43 says, how do lines 1 to 2, putting in 100% as always, contribute to the development of ideas in the poem? So lines 1 and 2 is introducing us to the Brush Creek. And it says it stood low when museum men came with their measuring tapes and sketchbooks. So it's really just an introduction. Suggesting that the men are too busy. Not necessarily. Helping establish the reason for the men's visit and purposeful behavior. Purposeful matches the language with the passage perfectly, because why else would they mention those, they say measuring tapes and sketchbooks? So absolutely. This matches the language perfectly. So here's our choice. 44, what impact do the words swish, chitter, and cry have in the poem? So these words over here, they give us the lines swish, chitter, and cry. So he's listening for those sounds that are common in the summer. Another theme is this repetition that it's winter, it's quiet, it's winter. In the summer, it's full of life, but it's winter and it's quiet. So the idea here, he's listening for all these sounds, the chitter and the swish and the cry, but it's dead silent because it's winter. So we're looking for a choice that has to do with this. And it's exactly choice E, how lively everything is during the summer. These words match with lively, but now it's during the winter. So contrast. Okay, so 45 now is asking us which lines reveal how the setting affects the speaker and the men from the museum. So setting, right? So we're in the winter. So that's our setting. And so I'm looking for some choice that has to do with that. So not choice A, choice B maybe, but it's just talking specifically about the description of the underbrush. It doesn't show any effect on the speaker of the men. But C, we have winter and it weighed down on us like a weight. Here we have our answer. Does that make sense? Perfect. And yeah, everybody, this ends at 8 o'clock. So after this, we're gonna do the poem summarizing thing and close up. So next question, we're on 46 now. So 46 says, what impact do the phrases all but invisible and even less obvious have on the meaning of the poem? So if I go back to 16 to 8, all but invisible, the figure was even less obvious, the sinuous body. It's indicating that the mound was hard to notice. They're saying that it's invisible or less obvious. Both of these words match the language that it's hard to see the mound, which is exactly what choice E is saying. 47, at the mouth end, there was an oval mound. How did these lines contribute to the development? So this is our introduction to the presence of the mound at the mouth of the snake. This is our introduction to where the Serpent Mound actually is. So I'm looking for some word that has to do with the introduction, and that is either B or C. So it introduces a comparison of the body of the mound with the head of the mound, or it introduces a feature that has a different meaning to different people. So to kind of understand this, definitely C, because later on she goes ahead and she says like, this is what I think, and then this is what my pa says, and then I told my sister that, and she said something else. So this is showing us different perspectives of meaning, which matches with that choice that we just read together. All right, so 3 more questions and then we'll go ahead and move on to the poem strategies. So 48 says, the poet contrasts the speaker's and Ruth's point of view regarding the mound by using dialogue. So that's the contradiction that we just talked about. And the point is to show how they firmly believe in different interpretations of the mound, but their interpretations are just that, they're different. So if we go back and we look at the language, the dialogue specifically, it says, she insisted. Sometimes I think not swallowing or sinking. So insisted is a word that matches the language of this passage right here that she already decided on her own interpretation. She's insistent. She knows her interpretation. Perfect, the poem's form. So we talked about this, right? The poem's form is literally structured as one long stanza, and it has this visual effect of a snake. So we're looking for exactly that, long and winding shape of the mound. It's choice A. We don't have to think any further. And then last question, how does the speaker's interaction with Ruth convey a central idea of the poem? So the idea is that her interaction with Ruth shows that there's different interpretations, and particularly Ruth's interpretation is so positive that she thinks that it's the serpent singing, to the sun, and the other interpretation is a little bit more aggressive, that the mound is swallowing the sun. So these various interpretations show us how different people feel when they look at this mound. So we're looking for some sort of answer choice about different interpretations. And that answer choice for us is right here, that there's multiple interpretations of the mound based on feelings, based on perspective, based on opinion. This is key, multiple interpretations, F. Okay. Any questions for me before I kind of move on to the summarization portion? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a new page for us. And this page is going to be all about poem strategies. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start with poem strategies. So one thing that you guys can absolutely do for poem strategy is understanding details in the stanza. So I'll label this first one identifying themes. So this strategy is very similar to what we do when we read regular passages. You want to focus on adjectives. So what adjectives, what's the commonality between adjectives? So if we think about the poem that we just read together and we think about these adjectives, right away, winter silence, and then the contrast with the chitter and the chatter and the swish. So these adjectives of loudness and then of quietness are contributing thematically to our understanding of the poem, how it's quiet in the winter, how it's loud in the summer. So the idea of adjectives giving or descriptions, undulating, slithering, silently, all of this is giving us an understanding of what the poem is about. So thematically, that's the most important thing that you can do. Identify themes. One way that you can do that is adjectives, and then look for repetitions. So what is being said over and over again? Okay, any questions on that? Another important strategy is understanding literary devices and figurative language. So you guys, there's a lot of figurative language that you guys need to know. Stuff like this includes personification, which is when you give an object human-like qualities. So for example, for this passage, we can apply that with to the serpent actually swallowing the sun, or the serpent singing to the sun. That's giving human-like or actionable qualities to a non-living thing. So that's one technique, personification, that you guys should be able to see. Another one is metaphors or similes. These are comparisons. And another important one is just imagery. So again, this goes back to adjectives, which are very, very, very important in understanding a poem. So I'm going to go ahead and make an arrow here. And this also goes to like description. So you want to focus on imagery because that sets the tone, the setting. Okay, so another type of question is about the poem's form. So we saw that here specifically in terms of like that the whole poem looked like an undulating snake. But this is important in all poems. So pay attention to the form. Look at the rhyme scene, or look at the irregular scene, or look at whether it's strict rhyme and meter or not. Examine the form. So these are some common things that I've seen in the past that poems can do. They can have a regular rhyme scene, which you should point out right away, and that will come out in the answer choices. Another thing that they can do is have any strange capitalization that's never by accident, or strange form, like here we saw snake. So strange form or capitalizations or indentations. So none of this is accidental. You can also have a free verse poem where it doesn't have to rhyme. So pay attention to all of these things and how they contribute back to the theme. So again, this calls for yet another connection back to the theme, because the form isn't accidental. It's on purpose, and it's meant to emphasize something. And the last thing that I want to write here is about evidence. And this is, again, similar to how we read passages. So pay attention to evidence. Oftentimes the question will present an idea or phrase that captures some central theme, and it's going to ask you to pick out one of the 4 lines that's the best evidence. And this is where annotation comes in handy. Pay attention to details and what they suggest about the whole subject of the poem. So if the poem is about a person, think about the details that have to do with the identity of the person. This poem was definitely about the Serpent Mound, so we're looking for any descriptions or evidence that has to do with describing the Serpent Mound, and we're underlining and annotating that, because when they ask for like which line best describes the Serpent Mound, we would have already underlined that line and be familiar and comfortable with picking it. Does that make sense to everybody? So under here, I'll just put annotations. So any questions on poems? I have one more kind of quick review that I want to accomplish before we end. I did practice more poems, absolutely, but utilizing this strategy is a great way to understand poems as well. You kind of have to force yourself, because none of these come naturally, but the more that you practice and that you do these, even if they feel unnaturally in the beginning, you kind of get more and more used to it. It becomes routine. You become comfortable with doing this, and you think like an author, you think like a poem writer, you think like a question maker. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and create one more page and do types of reading questions. And then I'll take any last minute questions for you guys, and we will finish it off. All right, so the first type of question that I want to talk about is thematic questions, main idea questions, global questions, whatever you want to call it. So I can call it thematic / main idea. So this is kind of self-explanatory, and you guys all seen this. This has 100% to do with the central idea or theme. So remember, we were talking about this a lot, especially in the very first one that we did together. So for this one, identify the central idea. And you absolutely do not have to read the whole passage for this, because you should be thinking about the central idea as we're annotating. That's the whole purpose. And you're going to avoid these following things when you're doing this type of question. So avoid. So we're avoiding answer choices that are out of the scope, meaning any answer choice that includes false information that's not in the passage. So avoid out of the scope. We're also avoiding irrelevant detail. So this is sometimes true when they give you a detail that's true. They said this in the passage, but doesn't answer the question. So it's something that's said in the passage, but it doesn't answer the question that they're asking you. So this is another kind of trick answer. And then finally, this is what we were really talking about: avoid extreme answer choices. So no strong language. Look for soft, wishy-washy language. So that's really the first type of question. Another type of question then is direct opposite to this. Instead of being a theme question, instead of being a big idea, they can ask you detail questions. So this is number 2. So to answer detailed questions successfully, you want to skim the relevant section in your annotation, and you want to rephrase evidence, and you want to make sure that it's a detail, that you're not giving a big general summary, you're giving a detail. So remember, we talked about the general structures like theme, topic sentence, main idea, detail, detail. So you're looking for something supportive. So make sure number 1 is that it's a detail. So supports some larger idea. And again, what you should avoid is irrelevant detail. So correct detail that's wrong, or distortion. So anything that maybe part of it is right, but some of the answer is wrong. This goes back to our emphasis on being 100% the right answer. So even if 10% of it or 1% of it is wrong, that's not your choice, you're eliminating it. So here, what I'm gonna focus on avoiding is distortions and irrelevant details. Okay, so the next type of question that I want to talk about is function questions. And this is when they're like, what is the point of this paragraph? Or what is the point of this word? And this is really important because these types of questions are big on the SAT as well. So this is definitely something that you want to understand and be very familiar with because it's not going away. So they can ask about the purpose, right? So this is, think about purpose, which begs the question, why? Why this word? Why this paragraph? And I want you to focus on reason. So why or reason. And I want you to put yourself into the perspective of the author. And I want you to think, okay, if I was writing a paragraph, what would my purpose be to produce a paragraph like this? Or if I was including a quote, what would my purpose be? Like, what am I trying to emphasize or highlight with this quote? So think about purpose, put yourself into the writer's perspective. This helps me a lot also. And then finally, what I would say here also is focus on transition words, because these can often kind of signify to you what's the purpose of this. If you notice transition words like but or however, that signifies the purpose is to contrast something. If you notice, for example, that signifies the purpose is to give an example. So focus on transition words. And the very last type of question that I want to highlight here with you guys is inference questions. So these are, by my opinion, the hardest. And for these questions, you really want to think a little bit beyond the text. So you want to look for clues that shows how the author connects details within the passage and how the point of view limits the range of what could possibly be true. So like, what is this true beyond the text? So you have to go one step further, figure out the underlying point. Like, okay, this passage is about this, but what can I apply this to? So focus on applications and think beyond the text. And this one is big on connections also. What connections is the author making? All right, so here are these two strategies. I'm going to annotate them just a little bit more and highlight things here, but you guys can go ahead and present any questions that you have for me about either these strategies or just my background in general as we're closing up. Just to reiterate, you guys will all get a copy of these notes, and you can go ahead and screenshot them right now as well, or ask me if you guys want me to tell you anything if my handwriting isn't clear or anything like that. Just ask, absolutely ask. So somebody's asking if I recommend skipping questions. I would say make a choice, but code for yourself. So I 100% keep talking about having a personal code. I do for myself when I take exams, whether you star, whether you put a little time or something to signify go back to it at the end. But I don't recommend leaving it blank just because there's a lot of problems that can happen. You can get messed up and your bubble sheet can be one above, and that's a major time waster. Or you can go forget at the end of the test, like you're so anxious and nervous to finish up, you can forget to go back to that question. So I absolutely would not say leave it blank. But do code for yourself to go back to it. That's 100% useful. And here are the reading strategies. Absolutely. So I 100% agree with Sophia. You have to have some coding system for yourself to know to go back to that question. Absolutely. Okay, so somebody's asking me, how do you avoid getting bored of an article? So students ask me this all the time. Some people, and me included, if we like the topic, we're 100% into it and we do really well, we get full comprehension. And if you don't like the topic, you all of a sudden don't put as much effort into it. So this is 100% something that happens to all students. My strategy for avoiding this is read more, practice more, do more passages to the point where you're reading so much that your skill speaks louder than your interest level. Does that make sense? Bye, Nikhil. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Highlight, annotate. If you communicate and interact with the passage, you will 100% be more interested. You're forcing yourself to have a relationship interaction with the passage, and that way you're engaging yourself and you're less bored. Absolutely. You can ask a question regarding the story or anything that you want. Bye, London. Bye, guys.
Olga, we want to say thank you as a group. We're all going to say thank you. We're going to unmute ourselves. Let me try this. Wish me luck, guys. I'm figuring it out. Okay, ready? Unmute. Ready? Everyone. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
1, 2,
Thank
3,
you.
go.
Thank you.
Olga,
Thank
thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Olga. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And it really means, it really means a lot to us that you're doing this, and you yourself as a medical student, as someone going into the healthcare profession as your career choice, we are really honored that, that we get to have you and have you work with us. Thank you so much.
You guys.
Thank you, Olga. Much appreciated. Thank you for this wonderful webinar. It was
Thank you very much. Amazing.
Look forward to seeing some of you next week at the new class, the SHSAT workshop that we're teaching.
Mm-hmm. Me too. We want to say thank you to everyone.
Thank you.